Florida watercolor fans, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm super excited to share with you one of the thousands of watercolor techniques that are out there. I don't know that there's a name for this, it probably is, but it's basically using a black art pen. Micron is what I use. I'm sure there's different ones, but it needs to be waterproof and archival ink. And they come in different sizes, but basically I'm outlining what I'm getting ready to paint, and I'm painting, so you can do it a lot of different ways. But what I have found with my class and working through some of these projects is, for somebody that's a type painter like I am, it's super fun because it makes me paint faster and looser, and I feel more able to make fun color choices and not be worried about edges, because the edges are obviously already there. One of the variations of this technique is to actually paint your image first and then use the black outline as a finishing technique. And I've got examples to show you how that looks. And so the other variable with this technique is painting on different surfaces. So it's very flexible. You can paint on stone paper, aquaboard, regular paper, UPO. So, and I've got samples of all of those different things to show you as well. So I hope that you guys find this fun and enjoyable. I was reminded to tell you, if you ever go to make a painting this way, you need to check prospectuses before you enter them into shows, because some shows don't like this technique or like you using an archival pen. I have entered multiple shows with paintings like this and done well, and people liked the look. And I find in the watercolor world, just being able to approach things different ways is half the fun of this process. And also, I just had this idea to share with you. I have been asked multiple times as a teacher to come into settings with people, like group settings of people that just want to do a fun project. Maybe they're at a conference, maybe they're on a cruise ship, whatever it is that they're doing, kind of the sip and paint idea. And so what I have found is this process works super well, because you can pre-print black outline. And I have an example of the very first painting I did with this process and what it looks like pre-printed. And so what works super well is you have an hour and a half and everybody wants to go home with something pretty. And so you can pass these pre-printed pieces of, I used UPO, but you can use paper. You just have to make sure, however you print it with permanent ink. So everybody went home with something fun, and they didn't have to worry about a drawing or a finished edging. They could just put paint on the paper and enjoy themselves. So without further ado, let's get to our painting table and look at some samples of what I have done with this technique. And then we'll paint a little bit and see where it takes us.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
So what we're seeing here is the very first painting that I made using this technique. This is on UPO paper, and it had black. This was done so many.
Fix it in the. Yeah.
It was pre-printed, and I'm remember running it through a printer with permanent black ink. I did this a long time ago, and so I cannot remember if I did it at home or with a printer. But I pre-cut the sheets of paper. You can buy standard sheets of standard size pieces of paper with UPO. You can cut them yourself, whatever, run through your own printer. Just make sure it's a printer. I think they're called laser print, not anyway. So you just want to make sure when you go like this, the black's not going to smear. So the thing to remember with UPO paper is if you go to add paint on UPO and then won't adhere, it's because you've got little oily fingerprints on it, and all you have to do is take a paper towel and a little bit of alcohol and wipe it off, which I had to do earlier today on this because I've been carrying it around for a while. But anyway, the nice thing about this is, like I said before, you can throw paint super fast. You can lift it up super fast because UPO paper doesn't soak, the paint doesn't soak in. So you can see how it reactivates, and you can make hard edges smooth. If you get the wrong color, if you move too fast, you can just have a lot of fun with that. So I will show you super quick how a situation like this, you can have a lot of fun with it just by painting really quickly. I will show you also really quickly what the finished product ended up looking like. It's a little bit bigger than my field, so I'm going to slide it around a little bit. But you can see how the black outline looks once you add color. I just splattered the background, so I didn't have to worry about anything like that, which is also a great way to cover space quickly without having to spend a lot of time and effort. So I wanted to show you real quick on this. Putting, you always are going to follow, in my mind at least, the way I paint.
Straighten it up.
I'm sorry, keeping you crooked. The same painting techniques as traditional watercolor, which is lightest colors on first. I already started that with a little bit of yellow. You can see right there, it's not adhering because I've got oil on there. I need to clean that piece off. But
What color are you using now?
this is Cheap Joe's sour lemon, I believe. But you can see I'm not having to worry about where I'm putting paint at all because I can easily lift it back off. I'm just being able to quickly put this on, which works so well for quick and fun, get in and get out painting styles. What you don't want to do is keep painting over areas that are.
What color are you using now?
This is Skip's Green. Thank you. Kathy's going to keep me straight because I tend to paint and stop talking. So as we progress through this, you can also see I don't have to worry about creating blended areas because I've got the lines on there, and if I get the wrong color in the wrong place, again, you can just easily lift it off. So this nice long brush with this nice long point is a Princeton Velvet Touch long round 14. It's just, I tend to paint with a brush, the top third of my brush pretty much exclusively. I don't know why, but that's just my deal. But, the fun thing also, I keep trying to teach my class this. So you see, I just dropped a piece of paint right in the middle of my, split it right back off. Blend it in, let it have some fun in there. I try to teach my class, once you have your drawing, you can put whatever color you want, and it makes it more fun if you mix it up a lot more than what you're seeing sometimes in nature. So, you know, stick some of these more dramatic colors in there. Let them,
What are you putting in now?
you know, this is funny. I believe I thought it was phthalo, and it's the phthalo green, but I have a bag full of color that a friend, Taylor Eichen, gave me, and I don't remember. I squirted it in there, and I apologize because my class today asked me the same color. It's such a pretty color, and I was like, you know, I'm really not sure. I'm gonna have to look when I go home and see where it came from. So I bring a bag of paints to class and share them with my students. And half the time, they're so old that the labels have worn off and we can't remember what they are. And we just kind of giggle about it and go about this. So, anyway, I'm gonna wrap this up pretty quickly, but I just wanted you to see how quickly, how fun you can do this process. It has brought so much joy to my class to be able to do these things, and I'm getting ready to show you the projects that we did. I'm obviously going way too fast, but you can do that when you're on Evo. The main thing you want to do, no matter what you're painting, is always keep your contrast, your light to your dark, your colors that are friendly with each other and not friendly with each other, separate or together. I'm going to slide this over and show you what we worked on in class and how these different things look. So this is on stone paper. If you guys saw demo I did last year, it was on this paper. I was calling it Terraskin, and that's because that's what it used to be called. It was purchased by another company and is now called stone paper. So I apologize for any of those of y'all that saw that and tried to find Terraskin and did not. Stone paper, and it literally is made out of stone. It's crushed up, carbon. I can't even tell you exactly, but it's fun to play with. It's similar to Yupo, where it sits on top and it has very vibrant color. It does lift, but it doesn't lift quite as easily as Yupo. And I find using a Q-tip like this and scrubbing with a little bit of vigor, you can get color right off. So you can see on.
And that's just water. That's just
water on a Q-tip.
You're not using alcohol.
No, you do not have to use alcohol. So it just doesn't come up quite as easily as on Yupo, but this is coming up pretty fun. So this is an example of a painting that we did of a bouquet of flowers. And this technique is when we put paint down first and then added the black outline afterward. It was a lot of fun. It's always challenging on Yupo and Terraskin because you can't control it all the time. This is the same technique You can see I started to outline it, but I didn't fully outline it because I wanted y'all to see the difference in having it, how it looks before you outline it. It looks very unfinished and loose in some of these areas. And then once you add this black outline, it really pulls it together in a unique and fun way. This is on paper, so it was much easier to control it. It's easier to get blended color.
What kind of paper was that?
This is probably Arches 140-pound cold press.
Cold press?
I have not tried this on hot press, so you know, again, you can do this style on any kind of paper, and especially in a loose image like this, you can really have fun. This was a challenge for my class because it made them think abstractly a little bit more, leave a lot of white gaps in their painting while trying to go from a lot of light to a lot of dark. They tend to want to fill in the gaps, so lots of fun. So I'm showing you all these different surfaces. I have two other ones I can show you that are framed paintings that have been in shows and done well. And these are on aquaboard. So you can't see this completely well. The color's a little washed out. But this technique works super well on aquaboard and has a really interesting looks to it. The thing with aquaboard, so those other images I showed you did not have any masking fluid used. This had a lot of masking fluid used, and you can see that it was a great way to save a bunch of little white dots and the scales of the fish. So with aquaboard, you have to remember you can only use masking fluid in one layer. It doesn't work to try to save paint, so you can't paint in multiple layers with aquaboard because it just pulls the paint back off the board. This is one final image to show you. This worked great with an alligator because they have so many lines and all their little pores on their chin and grass and the whole bit. It's a lot of detail that if you're trying to paint that would take a lot of time trying to define in detail. And this was great. I could paint it so quickly and it turned out really well. People really like that. And I also, you know, you realize you don't have to put all the details, but that was probably only 1/10 of the grass that was actually there. All right. So what we can do now is actually look at two different approaches that we've talked about. This is
Center it, center it. Perfect.
This is a hummingbird moth perched on a flower bud, and I pre-outlined it with my micron pen. And so these come in different sizes as well, which either adds more or less black. I believe I used the number 10, which is pretty thick. They go all the way down to 0.01, 0.03. I do like them bigger. I like the black stronger because it can tend to get lost if you use the smaller pens. And I did add a tiny bit of masking fluid on this just to save the white, which there is not much. There's only a few little specs around, and so I really wanted to be able to paint quickly with you guys, and so I will show you also the original photograph so you can see what we're looking at.
What we'll do, Donna, is send the photos to Ron and he can
Oh.
just put it in the
Okay.
corner.
So don't worry about that.
Don't worry about that. And
All right.
you can send the images, those images to Ron too. And
Okay. Is it okay to sit down?
yeah, and I'm gonna turn the overhead light on too, so you can see.
Oh, okay. I can see fine if it's unless they just need more color. I think that wants more color. It's raining. Why is it raining? All right, so traditional painting, I'm going to wet my surface. I'm thinking that it would be fun to make the background of this more interesting, well, to paint in the background of this. And what I want to do is put salt on it to create texture. So the wings of this moth are black and transparent. So I'm literally just gonna put my water right over the antenna, right through the wings, because as I paint those in darker, it's not gonna matter. Okay. So again, start with my lightest colors. We've got my lime or my
Sour lemon.
sour lemon, thank you, in the middle. While I've got that on, I'm just gonna go ahead and paint in the back of my sweet little guy here. I actually got to take a mosaic class last week, and we did the same image with stained glass, which is really fun.
What color are you using right now?
Okay, and this is opera. Like I said, I don't have to worry about the wings. I want to make sure I get this pink coming through the transparency of the wings. So I'm being careful to get that down as far as it goes. No, this is not part of the picture. Starting out very light. Get my transparency colors going in there. And then I really want to get some brighter areas that have that are punched by putting some darks in there, but I think I'm gonna have to wait until it dries a little bit. So what I'm gonna do in the meantime is drop in.
And is this on Arches 140?
This is actually a piece of hot press.
Ooh,
So
Arches?
I don't usually paint on hot press.
Arches or Fabriano, or do you know?
It is, unknown. I paint on everything.
And what color are you using now?
This is indigo. This,
Which manufacturer?
probably Cheap Joe's.
Because different indigos.
American Journey, yes. There's a large variety of, differentiation in indigos, which, I don't like because of the color that I really like to use, and I started off using American Journey, and when I jumped into a different manufacturer and it was so different, I realized I had to be careful with that. So the wings of this bird have a lot of or the small have a lot of reflective pink in them, so I'm actually gonna go ahead and paint this pink all the way out.
And that's still opera, right?
This is opera, but it got a little bit of, the indigo that was still in my brush, which is okay because the final picture, that area is gonna be a lot darker. So, I'm not worried about that. And it actually, the wings actually get a little bit of magenta kind of reflecting because of the black. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick those in there too. The body of the moth, I used indigo, it's black, but it has very dark blue undertones to it. And these areas right here that I have masked are actually a really light blue. And I want to pick up that reflection of that light blue. So while this indigo is on here, I'm just going to go ahead and punch it up a little bit just to make it more fun than indigo. And it's, that's an ultramarine. It's bleeding a little bit into my pink because I'm rushing. So
You don't need to rush.
Pick that up a little bit.
This will be made fast if it's,
Yeah.
you just go at your speed.
All right.
I'm having an urge to pick up your pools of color so I don't get back blossoms.
When
Like, I'm stopping myself from running out there and,
picking up my pools of color.
yeah. I'm stopping myself.
That's fun.
What color did you use to get the more red in there?
I used I get one. It is Rambling Rose or Alizarin Crimson, which kind of go in between for me. So I really want that dark in there. So I'm gonna let that stay. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry for a minute. Because so much of the rest of that is just a little bit of detail work. This, on the other hand, is a lot easier to keep painting because this is aquaboard. And
Get it centered?
it is a, you may not be able to see it very well, but it is a white orchid with green leaves. And I have pre-masked this, but I didn't outline it. I wanted to have two different approaches so that you could see the two different ways that you can paint this. So the orchid is yellow in the center, white on the edges. So I'm going to try to.
Hold on. Can we stop for a minute?
Yes.
Hold on for a minute. Done.
So we're going to look at a different surface while the paper is drying with my prior painting. And we also have zoomed the surface out a little bit so you have a better view of the entire picture and a little bit of my palette. This is aquaboard and I have not pre-outlined this. I planned to paint this and then do the outline afterward. So again, two different techniques, similar result in the end. I, again, don't worry as much about trying to save my edges. I don't worry about trying to paint the detail of the edges because it will all pull together in the end with the black outline. So this is a white and yellow orchid. I have also pre-masked just so I could move a little bit more quickly through this and save some of the white edges of the different leaves. So, Aquaboard is a little bit, well, quite a bit different than paper because it so quickly absorbs the water that it's hard to get a lot of fluid transitional blends. So what I tend to do is paint this in sections. You can see where I'm wetting that it does stay wet in those areas, but if you've ever painted on the border, if you would like to try, what you need to know is that those wet areas diminish quickly, and oftentimes you just have to keep adding more water. And you can see the difference between the wet and the dry clay. So you know, okay, it's time to add more water. So here we go. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of pink up here and the roots, leads down into yellows.
And you're using the same color.
Same yellows. So what I'd like to do, since everything is kind of similar in color here, is mix up the color so it's not so following realistically as much as having some fun, making it more dramatic. So greens, I'm using Skips green, which is way more limey, and then going following what it would look like realistically. A lot of these areas have a bit more blue green, so I'm going into a very strong palette of bluer green.
And it's
It
that,
is it's a phthalo green, I believe. You can see the difference. It is bleeding here where I wet it. Here I didn't wet it. So it is it does create a very hard line, just like on paper, but you can go in and reactivate it. Aquaboard allows you to lift to a large degree as well. And so it's a lot of fun. So there's some really strong
what did you just put down?
dark greens in there. That was ultramarine. I believe it's made by Sennelier, and so the pigment is super dense.
Because it has
much
honey.
stronger than
And it has
some-
honey.
Yeah. So I'm gonna tone it down just a tad by sticking a little bit of indigo down in here. Because sometimes it's a little bit too strong for me, and I want to not make it all quite so dramatic. So I'm also adding some sap to create a little bit of realism in some of that green.
Is that Sheep Joe's sap? American
It
Journey?
is American Journey, yes. It kind of got away from my, so I just dropped a blob of ink on my board here. With a thirsty brush, I'm picking the majority of it up, and then with a Q-tip, I can go all the way back down. Pretty much. It does stain a little bit, depending on what color we use. But I'm going to be painting in the background anyway, so I'm not worried about that. I want to add some more of that pretty blue over here. And again, the more variety that you can add in your painting, the more variety of colors, as long as you have your drawing correct, the more interesting the painting can be, if we stick some of these other colors in it.
Is that color you don't know what the name of?
No, this is the Andrews turquoise.
It looks like Andrew's turquoise to me.
Yeah. When you ask me painting names, it's kind of like I paralyzed, like asking somebody, what's your kid's name? Like, I can't remember. It's terrible. But I'm having fun, moving more quickly than I normally would. Again, these edges are gonna be drawn in at the end, so I'm not really concerning myself with them to a large degree. I'm just having fun creating the drama of the color. Letting some of them blend into each other. Okay, so let's pick up a little bit more of that Andrews down here. I've painted a lot of orchids because my husband used to grow orchids, so we would have these beautiful blooms, and I was constantly like, I gotta do something, I can't just let it bloom and go away. And so if anybody even needs orchid pictures, you may need to call. But I realized painting them realistically all the time gets boring, because a green leaf is a green leaf is a green leaf. So have some fun with it. Stick some unrealistic color in there and let it do its thing. Okay, I'm gonna I can go. So here's something we talked about a minute before. It doesn't travel as much. Aquaboard doesn't travel as much as paper. And sometimes you can get in and stick a dark in.
And what is that?
This is a combination of sap and I believe it's indanthrone blue, which is a really pretty dark blue color. And so it gave me this real rich color right in here, which is the underneath of a couple of these leaves. It just helps pop that above color that much more. And you can see that it's, you know, I am painting right now on dry board, and I can go back in if I want to lift some light, like right here. It's very easy to come back in, reignite this paint so it blends a little bit better, lifting some of the color out. It's pretty versatile. I love, you can get these really pretty blends that start happening. Oh, that's another one. I didn't see that one. But this pretty cellular green. I believe that's what it is. I might be lying to you. If I am, I apologize.
It's either phthalo or Prussian.
I think it's cellular. I don't think I've ever had.
Looks like phthalo to me.
All right. I'm going to, one thing that I did was I stuck some pink up in the stem, and it doesn't really repeat anywhere else. There are a bunch of roots in this picture that I could repeat it, but I don't really want to drop the roots in. I really just wanted the leaves and the flowers. So I'm going to repeat that pink in the flowers a little bit. I'm going to create my own. So I'm gonna go ahead and, so again, like I said, these orchids are mostly yellow and white. I saved a bunch of the yellow, or a bunch of the white already. Let's see.
And that's still the sour lemon, right?
Yeah, I only have one lemon on my, or one yellow on my palette right now, and it's that sour lemon.
Which is a cool lemon, a
Yeah.
cool yellow.
I don't, my palette at home has a very light yellow and a more orange yellow. I just don't have it, in my traveling palette right now, which is fine. So, I'm just gonna quick drop some of these yellows in the different places that they live. There's a lot of reflective color in these leaves, which I want to capture from the leaves of the plant. But oftentimes I feel like I have to give myself, when you have a repetitive pattern like this, I feel like I have to give myself the skeleton to follow, or I get a little lost. So I spend a little bit of extra time filling some specific things. So right here, there's no, that color is not in the leaf, but I'm gonna let it in the photograph, but I'm gonna let it be in the leaf here because I want that reflective color. Makes it way more interesting. Let's see. Got yellow here. Got yellow here. Over here. So we also have some orange in the stamens of these plants. And I'm making it a little bit more intense than in the photograph because I just think it'll be more interesting.
What color orange are you
This
using?
is
On the floor, on
I
the
think
floor.
it's a cad. Yellow, it's a light orange, it's a yellow orange. This is cad, I think this is a cad orange. It's not really, it says on my palette cad orange, so it's most likely. But adding this in now while it's still wet and allowing these colors to blend is making it really pretty because there's a lot of light in that middle too, and I want to have this color working together. So I'm just softening them with my brush and letting them work. Okay, so now that I have my skeleton to follow, what I want to do is get some of that reflective color and some of that pink in there as well. And so I'm going to go back and
this is opera.
this is opera, yeah. And I'm going to add probably a little bit of purple into the pink stem up there eventually because it's a little bit darker. But right now, it's not a huge amount. It's more than is in the flower, but it's enough to pull the color forward and tie it into what you have going on there. There's also a little bit of reflective color in these other leaves, and this is actually more of the blue, but I'm using the pink because I think it's prettier. So again, I'm putting that same opera in some of the shadow leaves. Over here. I want to pick up some of the blue reflections, so I'm going to go back to that phthalo blue. Or actually, that's the blue that I'm not sure. Let's do some of that over there as well.
Donna, do you find that you sell the aqua board a little bit easier because it doesn't have to be under plexi?
You know, I haven't found that to necessarily be true. It's been nicer for me to sometimes be able to frame it open, because I like it. The thing that's interesting to me is being able to present a wide variety of ways to do things. So presenting different ways for my clients to frame things, like if they commission me to do a painting, and I talk through a lot of that stuff before we ever get started, and they're amazed at the amount of different ways that they can frame, the ways that what media they can choose. Oftentimes I find that when we talk through all the options before starting the commission, they completely change their vision and are happier. So, for example, if they know that they're going to be putting it in a room that has a lot of light, and, you know, we start talking about reflections and, you know, how to avoid the reflections and that sort of stuff.
Is that opera still or Janet's Rose?
You know, my Janet's Rose right now on my palette is dry and not being used. Because I sprung a leak underneath and I need to patch it. It keeps dripping out. So this is the opera that is has a little bit of this blue dripping down into it, which I don't, you know, I'm really trying to pick up on all the different reflective colors from other places in my palette, from these beautiful green leaves. So right now I'm just kind of sticking it everywhere, these different colors, different places. When I look at it and I see it.
And that's still the phthalo green, right?
Yeah.
Because it almost looks like Viridian.
Yeah. I just realized I missed a whole yellow leaf right in the middle. So, you know, it's interesting because some of the folks in my class recently were painting magnolias, and I could not get them to put color in those magnolias to save my life. And I'm like, you know, it's not white. Look at the color. Look at this. Look at that. And when I finally pushed them into it, they were so happy to see and understand what I was talking about. So, you know, as you see, I'm putting all kinds of different color in this. I'm stripping other colors through the middle of it. I'm letting different colors blend into each other. It just continues to make your painting so much more interesting than trying to stay just completely realistic with a white flower and green leaves. So, as you're seeing, you can keep going back into the aqua board and, reactivating, which is, something that a lot of people like as compared to, paper. It's not as easy to reactivate, but you've got, if your color gets too strong, you can lift it back up. Anyway, you see me spending a little bit of time trying to put some of this color in on edges, but not a lot.
And what color are you using?
This is probably Joe's red.
Okay.
I was just getting a little bit of stronger color right on the edge of those stamens. So. Let's see, one more. Finally, I'm going to grab a tiny bit of royal amethyst. Just really pretty purple, mix a little bit of the rose opera in with it to lighten it up just a tad. Because these leaves, as they turn under, have a lot of color shadowing in them. And I just want to use that color. So what I'm gonna have to do is make sure I put it in enough places that it makes sense to have it. This whole orchid right here has a lot of shadows underneath of it, so the reason that.
It's cold outside right now because of the storm.
Okay, so I'm just fixing that over there. There. So again, you see what I did. If I introduce a color in one place, you have to have it in a couple different places. Otherwise, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. All right. What is this? That is, I just spied the statement on this is so dark because it's in shadow. So I'm going to use a little bit of this. No, it's orange, but it's very, very dark. So I'm actually going to go into some clean gold and mix a little bit of my cat orange with that to get it down darker. Here we go. Just an interesting little turn of events. So I've got to also repeat that color again in a few places. So edges of these stands. All right. So I'm just about there. I've got one leaf that I see I've missed. What I'm doing now is I'm looking back and I saved the white. So all my spots should be on these leaves should be filled up with color. And if they're not, I missed something. So I'm putting a little bit of color in any place that I see that I missed. And it's usually because it's just a very light cast of a shadow, which tends to be blue. So for me, shadow means blue of some way, shape, or form. So,
And what color blue are you using?
that is the same,
Mystery
Uh,
blue?
mystery blue that is right there. That has bled down in with, some ultramarine. And there's one more. One more. That. You need a little bit of yellow in there. You need a little bit of yellow in there. You need more yellow. One here. So I am trying to. As it soaks in, a lot of times you see the colors start getting a little boring or a little flat. So you can go back in and give it a second little pop.
And that's,
This is yellow and the light orange, which I believe is the cad. Is there a cad yellow one? I don't know. I mean, it's a
it
light.
almost looks like brilliant orange, which is a Holbein color. But you probably don't have any of that.
I don't remember ever, but like I said before,
It's what it looks like for me. It looks like brilliant orange. But then again, I don't have CADs on my palette, so.
yeah. All right. So just about done with this to let it sit and dry. I'm gonna clean up a couple little splatters. You can see that stain because that was that mystery blue. It's got to be some version of a phthalo. There's always stain. Very stain. So I will. So another thing about aquaboard, which is nice, if you can't get it up easily with a Q-tip, get some clean water and go in with a scrubber brush. You can work the clay where you cannot do that same amount of work
With paper.
on paper. So I'm going to get this last leaf over here that I ignored by accident. And it is largely in the light. So I'm going to put my skip screen on part of that, but it's disappearing and underneath of it is dark. So I'm going to use my ultramarine to fill in the dark. I wouldn't have rushed that quite as much because it's bleeding, but I wanted you guys to see it. So that color looks a little bit bold. It's not getting picked up quite as much. Probably what I would do is go back and define some of this area a little bit more. I think once it dries, it's going to be kind of a repeat there. But there's some edges like right here that have a lot more dark in it. So I can pick it back up in places like that. Right in here, there's some edges of leaves that I could pick up some of that stuff. So you have to keep going back as things dry and evaluate where you're at, you know, what's needed. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a successful watercolor artist was to walk away and you gain perspective. Everything changes as it dries. So give it time to breathe, give it time to grow and, grow with it. So, anyway, so I'm gonna set this to the side. And we can go back to the first one that I started while this is drying. My mom, if you guys have never gone to North Carolina and gone into a flower garden and see the butterflies and the moths that they get there, it's just insane. So,
Can you push it a little bit this way? Yeah, perfect.
I'm gonna go change my water.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay, we are back on the moth right now, and I wanted to share super fun thing when you have a background that is undefined, or you want to do something different with it. The picture that I'm using here, the background is really soft greens because it's in a garden. Nothing is defined. I want to make the background at the same time as being uniform. I want to make it more interesting than just a bunch of green, model green garden colors. So I thought it would be fun to pick up the blue that is the light blue that is in the moth's body. And so what I'm doing is I'm going to use kosher salt, which is a little bit, it's a heavier variety than table salt. And I'm going to, I'm wetting this whole background, and I'm going to add this pretty blue.
And this is the blue. We don't know what it is. Okay. It looks almost like an Antwerp or a manganese.
Yeah, I do believe it. It's, I love manganese, and so I have a feeling that's really good. But I mean, I've had it in my palette a lot. Should have used a little bit of a bigger brush because I'm not getting this on here quite as fast as I'd like. But as long as you keep it wet and moving, it's fine. Get this on here, labor through this for a minute. The fun thing about this is you can cover a lot of ground really fast, end up with a complete surprise. You never know exactly how it's going to look when it's done. Looks like I got a piece of masking fluid right there. That's all right. All right. So if it's not spread exactly evenly, you can pick your paper up, move it around a little bit. So this is just a container that I put salt in. And all I'm doing is sprinkling it around on my paper, and then I'm going to ignore it. And it's gonna be working its magic while we're playing with the rest of the picture. And make sure, if you're not in your own gallery space, you clean up your mess so your boss doesn't get mad at you. So this flower is dry, and what I want to do is now I have all my nice light pinks all over it. I'm gonna go back in and add in some of my stronger pinks first. I'm going back into my opera. And I'm going along the edges of this because if we saw the picture, which Ron's gonna share with you, it the color gets stronger on the edges of these petals. But I don't want it to be as severe as this is looking, so once I get some on there, I'm gonna go back with water and just soften it so it's all leading into the light of each of the petals. When you move fast, you can paint dry and then manage with water. And that is really my favorite way to paint. Once I get my initial layer of color down, which I almost always put down very wet, I like to paint dry and then manage with water. So again, I'm just coming in, I'm trying to bump the edges. I've got some salt interfering with me here, which just push it out of the way. And good deal. Again, if you remember, I said the petals actually show up behind the
Donna, could you push that a little bit?
translucency of the moth. And I want to make sure that carries through because that's really a cool effect. So, so if you think I'm painting the moss wing, I'm actually painting the edges of the petals that are showing up behind the moss wing. Again, going back while it's still wet and managing the edges. If you notice, I usually keep a paper towel in my hand so that I can clean my brush and then dry it. If you don't dry it, or mostly dry it, you keep adding water. And as you keep adding water, you keep losing control. It's all about how much water you have on your palette or in your brush and on your. So if you notice, it's starting to build this nice light to darker edges. And now that the petals are damp, I can keep going back and adding more color onto those edges, and they're going to keep moving up slightly, not all the way through those petals, so that I don't have hard edges. I'm going to keep light in each petal. Each of the petals has movement in it, and so it's really important to get light to dark in each of them. Petals tend to curve for this kind of flower anyway. The petals are curving. Again, I can go over the antenna because the antenna are dark, so this pink will disappear, and the legs are dark. So I'm not worrying about losing any of that right now. I just am trying to get this dark and darker pink edging. And
Is this a zinnia or a dahlia?
I think it's a zinnia.
Looks like a zinnia to me.
My sister loves the garden, and North Carolina flowers grow so well there during the summertime. She's out in the country, so it's wild to watch. And you have to get all these flowers, then you get all these hummingbirds, and the hummingbirds are like fighting with each other right outside the window. You can sit there and watch it. Lots of fun. Okay, so I'm sticking a little bit of red now into my pink. 'cause I
And is
wanna-
that Joe's red?
Is Joe's red. I want to, get some variation. And as, the light is changing, the zinnia, as it gets down lower, the shadows get more purple. As it's up higher, it's in the light, so the color gets hotter. And that's why I added, a red into the pink, because I want to get that feeling that I'm getting more into the light. And out of the shadows. So it's got even, the brighter orange in the pink. I keep mixing it in with my opera because the base color, if you're looking at it, it's always pink. So I'm trying to keep that. And also, as in the painting before, we talked about how the more variety of color you can add to something, the more interesting it gets. So that looks like a big old sloppy mess. Go in and just manage the edges. I can move so quickly through this because I have my black outline. I'm just blending these colors, letting them lay together.
And I've forgotten what paper is this?
This is the hot press.
This is hot press.
It's 140-pound hot press paper.
You don't remember whose it is, do you?
I don't. I think you gave this to me. You had donated this to Florida Watercolor, and I bought it because I wanted to play on it. Do you remember what you donated?
And probably Fabriano
Might be.
or Arches. It wasn't Stonehenge because I kept all the Stonehenge hot press.
So I've got my hot color involved up here. I've got my pinks in here. I would like to get some more magenta, which is permanent rose or alizarin crimson, one of those. So I'm going to come back and with some of those areas, just keep building. I want this flower, I want it to be a little bit more dramatic than it actually looks in the photograph. Because the petals don't pop quite enough to be interesting as much as we can make them. All right, smoothing it out. You guys can see how with this technique, as I said before, I'm not having to worry about staying in the edge lines. I'm not having to worry about is that the edge of the petal. I'm not having to check my photograph that frequently because it's already drawn on here. So it's just fun to push through and charge ahead, make bold color decisions. I just took a little bit of alizarin crimson with the royal purple, the royal amethyst, and it's wet right now, so I'd rather not introduce that quite yet. But there are some dark elements in and around some of these petals that also will help make them pop. And I'm going to use that color in a few minutes after this dries for a second.
You want me to get the hair dryer out?
We can put it in. You know, what I can do is, pull the other one back. And, take the mask off. And
Do you want me to stop the recording?
so we're gonna transition while this dries for just a minute and the salt finishes doing its thing. We're gonna go back to the orchid and lift the masking off and show you how fast we can add in the black lines and be close to done with the painting. So we're gonna transition for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, we are back to our orchid now that it was mostly dry. I picked up most of the masking off of it. So you can see the edges are pretty hard and you could go back in and soften those if you wanted to. But part of the fun of doing this outline technique is it works well with harder edges. And so now that this is mostly dry, you can come in and with your micron pen, just literally start following the outline of what you painted. I drew this on here ahead of time just so I could move quickly for the video. And again, these pens come in different sizes. And so you could get a fatter line, a thinner line, but you can pick up so many details that you maybe didn't even paint in if you wanted to. For example, this fruit has different edging in here. So I'm getting into trouble. This pen isn't working well because it's still damp. The board is still damp. So it's not working as well as it should be working. I'm going to install a different pen that I have. Let's see. This is just a Sharpie pen, which is not archival. So this is not what you want to do if you're making a painting that you want to keep, but you're doing it for fun. It's no big deal. But this is working a little bit better than my micron pen. But you get the idea. You come in and literally just follow along what you've painted. And it's pulling together what is missing. I'm going to come up here where this white is and see, get my pens to work. I didn't anticipate the dampness filling my pen.
Just because it hasn't rained in forever.
Yeah. Well, the dampness because the board is still damp and painting on it. It was dry enough to lift the masking off, but it's still damp. So even through the white, like this petal is all white, you can create this lines and it makes it more interesting. And it's just following the paint that I put on there, the streaks on the paint. And so like these little stamen, the little detail on the stamen picks it all back up. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you that very well because it's too wet. So I'm going to go back to what I showed you in the beginning, and we can look at that, because this is 100% dry. And
All right, you're gonna need to push that forward.
I don't have to even
Yeah, that's it.
look at the picture.
Yeah.
See if I can get the pen working again now. So that- Turn that off for a second, let me find it. Okay, so this one's completely dry, so the black outline will go on very easily. I'm going to follow every single little edge that looks so random and hard edged before it's drawn, and when you come in and do this black outline, it's so interesting to me how it looks so finished and layered. The light to the dark, all these little dots. It just pulls it all together. It's really fun to be able to paint quickly and with abandon and intentionally leave peek through light, layer color, and then come back in. So you can see, put on some good music, put on an audiobook. It's very therapeutic. My class loves doing this. I had a hard time getting them to paint at home, and literally they went home and did this project because they loved it so much. And plus you can sit on your couch and do this. You don't even need your paintbrush and paint. But you can see, I won't labor you through this whole process, but this is all you have to do. Again, I would use archival ink pens. The one I'm using right now is not one because I was using my archival ink pens on the orchid and it was still a little damp and it killed it. So we just finished going through the whole thing, even these little dots like this. It seems like it doesn't make sense to do that, but it does when you pull it all together in the end. Have a great time. Keep the movement going. These flowers have these stamen that stick out different directions. I didn't paint them in because I was just going to use the pens to do it. They're coming out at different heights, different directions. So that's the technique. Putting the black line on after, putting it on before, painting with abandon, having a great time,